Hi boys and girls, welcome back. Hey, today we've got timing chains. We're going to put the timing chains in on the Jetta. Stay tuned. Let's get to work.
Woo! It's go, 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 go time. Tick, tick, boom.
Get to work. All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back. Hey, since we're continuing the how-to video, first step here, we got to feed this chain in and then make sure that the locating links line up with the correct tooth on the camshaft sprockets. So the first thing I'm going to do is kind of get it pretty close. Then I'll get that upper chain guide snapped in place. All right, then we're going to grab a 16mm box wrench and I'm going to turn that and make sure that we get the teeth lined up exactly right. You'll see right here as I get it lined up and then lock the chain in place. What I've personally found is that the chain has enough grip on those teeth to maintain its position, generally speaking. Now here's a view from the bottom. Don't do what I did here. So having this sprocket loose with no bolt in it, it's just on there by the surface tension of the oil. So that's the only thing that's actually holding that sprocket in place right now. Don't do this. Always, always, always keep the bolt in there if there's going to be tension on those chains at all. All right, with that said, you can see the golden link there. That's got to line up with the tooth that has the dot on it for the cam sprocket, just like that. And then what I'm going to do here is, because I realized my mistake, I'm going to go ahead and put the bolt in. You might see later what I was talking about. So then we'll wrench this down. Just has to be snug enough that we can, keep that sprocket from moving. Get the chains lined up. So now what I've done is I've lined up the intake camshaft with the golden link. I've lined up the crankshaft with the golden link. Then what we'll do here is I'm going to slip the intake side chain guide in place, and then we'll torque that down. For all the timing chain guides, that would be 20 Newton meters or about 15 foot-pounds. Some of these I'll show you, I do it with a torque wrench. Some of them I do it off screen. So there's 2 pins in there. Both of those are recommended mandatory replace. So I've got brand new bolts for both of those. So I'm going to put them in there finger tight and then come back and torque them down. All of these ones in here are that M8 triple square. All right, so once those are torqued down, what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn the bolt on the crankshaft and try and pull some of the tension out of the chain between the crank and the intake camshaft. But if you watch here, you can see it skip a tooth. I'm going to have to go back and fix that in just a second. So what I'm going to do instead is I'm going to get everything lined up so that I have the tensioner ready to go on the exhaust side. Then we'll make sure that this bolt is in the right place, the golden link on the crankshaft sprocket there, and then we'll go ahead and tighten everything back up. So this tensioner right here gets that 9 Newton meters treatment, which is about 7 foot-pounds. Then here you'll see that exhaust side guide going in. I'm just going to set that in place. I'm going to have to tighten it in. The bolt for that goes in at the top so that it can pivot around it near the camshaft. So then here we'll use the 16mm wrench on the flat that's in that camshaft again. You'll see me push that chain until we get the golden link lined up with the tooth that has the dot marked on it. Get that all lined up nice and tight. And then as I let the pressure off, you'll see I keep that chain wrapped around that gear. That helps keep the tension on. Then we'll take the bolt, we'll stick it in the guide rail right there, tighten it down about finger tight. That'll help keep enough connection between the gear and the chain to keep it from slipping. Again, this is that same torque spec, the 20 Newton meters. And then we'll turn the crank bolt right here and make sure that everything stays lined up. I'm gonna go several times around until these marks all line back up again. I do it by hand in order to make sure that we don't have any interference. If my timing chains are off a little bit, if I got one of them a little bit, we're getting a little bit of interference. You're gonna find out here when you turn it by hand instead of doing it when you start the motor. So you'll notice I took the tension off of the timing chain tensioner right there so that it's actually putting some tension on those chains. Here's where you'll see my mistake, right? Obviously this bolt is tough to get out. And then when I get it so far, you'll see that whole gear just jump out of place. Fortunately, it didn't really move on me, so I was able to loosen all of the tensioners, get it back in place, get it lined up, and then we'll get this back together right. Next up is the oil pump chain guide, same sort of thing. You line it up with the chain, torque that bolt down to that same 20 Newton meters. This one's the T30 star bolt. The torque's not that much, but you really have to be careful doing this one. You'll see here me regretting my life decisions having that bolt out, but you can't get the timing chain or the oil pump chain on there without having the bolt out. So that one's a little bit of a conundrum, but once I got it in, everything's in place. That bolt's holding that sprocket from moving. We'll torque this down, and then that little spring, you just push that over, and there's a hook point. You can't really see it because my fingers are in the way, but you hook it around that, and that'll keep the tension on the oil pump chain right there. So next up, we'll give this a good clean. We'll get that timing cover on there. All right, brand new timing cover. This is so nice. I'm glad that I ended up getting one of these out of the kit, because as you saw in the previous video, that other one was buggered. First thing I'm going to do, I'm going to pop out the cover right there. That's where the tensioning clip goes. That keeps the tension off of the chains. We'll give this a real good clean with some acetone. Make sure that the former gasket sits real nice and seals up nice and tight against there. Then we're going to do the same thing, little 2mm bead on here, and then we'll smooth it out with the finger. You know, really it doesn't take that much to seal up these surfaces, especially machine surfaces. So the tiniest bit of sealant there, and then smooth it out with the finger, makes everything just right. Just like many places on the engine, anywhere you've got those two angled faces meeting or two machine surfaces and then you put a cover on, I'm gonna put a little extra dab of the silicone RTV right there. Make sure that we get a nice fillet in that area. But then this bolt has to come back out again, and I'll show you why. Because I've got a little trick for making sure that the timing chain cover lines up perfectly with the crank harmonic balancer, pulley, whatever you want to call it, thingy-ma-thing. So you'll see I make sure that this is still nice and tight up against the block. Then we'll put the timing cover on there. That's got the RTV on it. But you can see I'm using the crank drive right there. You can see how it lines up very carefully with the tensioner, and make sure that everything goes together. And then I'm actually going to use the harmonic balancer itself to center that up. Notice I've got it on the guide pins. I've got the timing chain cover on the guide pins, but nothing is fastened down yet. So I'm going to go ahead and put this crank harmonic balancer pulley thing on there. I'm going to tighten this down by hand. Obviously I haven't replaced that bolt yet. We'll get to the final bolt here in just a minute, but I'll put that on there and make sure that it turns. Then I'll start all of the fasteners all the way around. They all start just like 2 threads per each, just finger starting them in there. Those ones don't line up. Obviously, it makes sense, right? We haven't tightened anything down yet. The cover's still sitting far away. Then I'll come in here. I'm going to tighten these 2 down. We'll just get them finger tight, right? We want this timing cover flush to the block. Then we'll get those 2 diagonal ones in there that go into the upper half of the oil pan. We'll load those in there. Then we go around, tighten everything down, at least 2 ugga-duggas, and then we'll come back and torque these. These ones, again, they're 9 Newton meters. It's like slightly over hand tight. So we'll go around, we'll get all of these, and then we'll keep moving. So now that I've got everything in, everything's in place, everything's torqued down, except for that crank bolt. You'll see me, that's the balance shaft adjustment. That's the tensioner for the balance shaft. So I'll put that in there. That torques down to some unbelievable spec. I don't remember off the top of my head. And then I'm gonna go ahead, while I'm down here, I'm gonna go ahead and put the idler pulley in there. You can see I've already pulled the clip out of the timing chain tensioner, so that's got tension on it. So I'll put the plug back in there. And then a little bit of lube on the idler pulley bore, and we'll get her slipped in there. So one of the things I found, you have to put a little bit of tension on this as you tap it in. So I tried it this way, but then in a second you'll see I figured out the secret. So a little bit of tension with the pry bar, tap, tap, tap with 2-pound patience. That wasn't working as good. So I put the bolt back in there, use the socket wrench, put a little bit of tension on it. You can see right there, just enough, line everything up, tap, tap, tap with a little bit of patience, she goes right in. Then we'll come back, we'll put that idler pulley back on there, torque that back down to spec, that'll be ready to go.
I'm about to pop off. Fuck you, you're lost. We all know that we never really want a boss. So
wouldn't you know it, she even still spins. So smooth. Then we'll come in here, we've got that bolt that holds that tensioner pulley from the backside. That's that T30 Torx. Tighten that down about that tight. And then since I'm here, I'm gonna go ahead and clip back on the upper radiator hose, get that feed fed in there, clipped on. Motor mount, these go in. We'll get these in here. And then these ones have an interesting torque. So the specs I have are 44 foot-pounds plus 90-degree turn. So that's what I went with on these. What you look at on the internet, you might find there's several different sources for the information on this. They all vary. Then we'll jack the motor up. You can see it moving around there. We got to get it high enough that we can get those motor mounts back together. There's still enough float in there that we can get everything bolted back into position. These ones are the same way. So once I get that passenger side mount started, I got the bolts started into the frame rail right there. You'll see me jack up the motor, then we'll line it up. Obviously it shifted out of position all those times we had it up and down. So we'll shift it back, force it into position. Everything here is still just loose, right? Barely started threads. We'll start the front, start the back, then we'll go ahead and torque everything down to spec. So larger bolts, 44 Newton meter or 44 foot-pounds plus 90-degree turn. The 16 millimeter bolts, these ones right here, those ones are actually going to be 30 foot-pounds plus a quarter of a turn. So all of these are one-time use bolts. So be careful. Make sure when you get all your hardware and all you go ordering all your gaskets and everything, make sure you order an extra set of these bolts because all of this stuff gets ridiculous expensive. So this is why the dealers charge so much on top of the fact that they mark up prices like ridiculous. But there you go, torque them down, and then you'll see I torque these ones. These are the 44 foot-pounds. Go till it clicks, and then all of these get plus 90 degrees. So there you go, plus 90 degrees. Last thing we're gonna do, we're gonna let the tension off of that jack, let the motor support itself, and there you have it. All right, boys and girls, timing chains are in. We got all that stuff torqued down. The motor's holding itself up. Good times. We got a little barbecue going on. Gonna enjoy some dinner, and we'll get back after it. From here on out, we're just gonna do regular project style videos. So it's gonna be a little bit faster paced, and we're gonna start getting back on that regular once a week posting schedule. So appreciate you guys. We're almost to 150. I wanted to be to 200, but I love every one of you. I appreciate all of you. Thank you for getting us to 150. And if you are the one that clicks that subscribe button and gets us to 150, send me a DM or something. You can find us on Instagram, you know, at I Have a Josh. It's not that hard to find. Check us out on our website, ihaveajosh.com. We got all your merch needs. You can get that fancy, 100 subscriber tee, or just get an I Have a Josh tee. If you're a Westwood fan, we got Westwood football gear that's up there. So that's in a little private section. Hit me up. I'll tell you where that's at. So thanks everybody for watching. I appreciate all your time. Let's get some food.